Barak Shalom, everyone. It's Out the Box Kingdom. Talk with me, Out the Box Kingdom. I hope you all are having a wonderful Yom. Why? Because it is the Sabbath Yom. Today is definitely a day that we are commanded, or should I say honoring Abba. We should be resting on this wonderful Yom because it's the 7th Yom of the Shabuah, right? According to the commandments and the instructions and the laws, okay? So anyway, I just wanted to come on here because Abba has an amazing way of how he's showing his children, us, his children, the concerns, of his, what's on his heart or the urgency that's taking place. And I know for the past couple of Shabuahs, in my dreams, it's been a lot of children being highlighted. And so, lately we see on the news or just hearing on social media that a lot of teachers are quitting because the children are just running. Let's just say they're acting in rebellious and perverse or profane behavior, right? And, sometimes, people can say, oh, these children are just outrageous. But at the same time, if they have no structure, then of course they are going to respond that way because it's really a crying out to needing some type of structure. And when people think of structure, they just think, oh, military school or sending your child to military boot camp is going to help with discipline. But that's another type of conditioning of discipline. You're now sending your child to deal with perfectionism and not still being able to think outside the box, but taking orders from man, but also learning how to become like a destructive weapon is even worse. Trust and believe, I know, because I went through the military. I know what kind of mindset training they condition you through. Is no different than you allowing the educational system, which, let's get real here, we know how the educational system was created. It was not created on the foundation of Abba's word. It was created by a foundation of a man that didn't even believe in the Most High. Actually, the educational system was created by this man that wanted to turn children into soldiers, but then he got introduced to Rockefeller, which Rockefeller was like, I don't want soldiers. I want laborers or workers. I don't want thinkers. I want laborers. I want workers. So he took that same structure of what that other man did and created his own. And this is how we got the educational system. And the grade point system is created to see how well you can comply to the rules that's given. And if you don't meet these expectations, they label you as you're going to be one in the prison system, which is another concentration boot camp. Let's just get real with that. Or you are a threat, right? Because usually those people that make abs, they already then rise them as they're going to be in the criminal system. But those that are C averages, these are the threats. So we got to do whatever we can take to, make them think that they can't succeed without the system. And then you got the A average people. These are the ones that they're going to transform into them like their children, right? But this ain't about exposing the system of the educational system. This is in regards to Abba, was revealing to me, like, people are complaining about children, but look what you got raising your children. You got them being indoctrinated by religion, different forms of Satan's religion. Let's get real here, because that's what religion is. And it's taking Abba's word and then using it in a different infrastructure to make it seem like it's a form of light, because Satan comes in the form of angel of light. So you got religion. Then you got media, arts, and entertainment. You got all these so-called celebrate me people that your children are idolizing. They want to be like them, but their music is derogatory and completely the complete opposite of Abba's word, along with the music, along with what they're watching on television, these shows that either showing them gangster, being drug dealers, having multiple women, being careless, you know what I'm saying? So preying on the emotions, you know what I'm saying? And then, of course, the educational system, the indoctrinating now of transgenderism and all this other stuff. And let me add in there false history, because man has came in and Satan has came in and used a group of people to to rewrite history, which is all false. So it's like you can't really blame the children. And I can see Abba is furious right now because he had me to read a whole bunch of scriptures today pertaining to children. First of all, the dream I had was him showing me, you know, being around children. You can learn a lot from children. They're very smart in their own way, and they're very discerning. If you pay attention to a child, you could be in a room with a group of people, and even though your discernment is low, a child can tell when somebody is evil. They may not say much, but a child has a symbolic way of like letting you know that person, they don't trust that person, like their body language. And then another thing, a child can definitely let you know when they're being abused by someone by not even saying nothing. It's their behavior, or they're peeing in the bed or something like that. Now they're getting punished, but yet instead of you asking questions or asking Abba, you're whooping them for peeing in the bed, but you don't know why they're peeing in the bed. It's a defense mechanism. Sometimes children do that when they're around their abuser. You know what I'm saying? And then it's that whole thing too, where parents tell their children to shut up and don't be asking no questions, but that is creating a stumbling block for your child. You have to ask questions to learn. You know what I'm saying? It depends on the answer you give that child, though. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just a lot. Like, a lot of the behavior I'm literally seeing is the anger and rage and the frustration. And these children, even teenagers, are crying out, where are the people where I can learn from wisdom? You know what I'm saying? Because there are times when I've had young people show up on my doorstep, young men and women show up on my doorstep, or have brought me my groceries, and Abba has had me to speak to them, and they've done cried, or they sat there and talked to me for hours. You know what I'm saying? And I guess people will say, oh, well, Kendra, you have a way with children. You have a way with teenagers. No, what it is Abba's using me to see the potential in that child, and I'm speaking life into them, because that's what they don't have nowadays. So all they know is negativity. So they're going to respond what seed is being imparted in them. You know what I'm saying? And so if you think about it, we had around my grandmother's time, they had mothers of wisdom that spoke wisdom into them. I think that's why I rather had hung out with women older than me than women my age or girls my age, because I love wisdom. And I was never like my friends. You know what I'm saying? And so the dream I had was pertaining to children. And it was like I was in an elementary classroom with these children. But I was very surprised at how mature these children were. And it says in scripture that Abba can use the mouths of babes, you know what I'm saying, when it comes, you know, to be against his enemies and stuff like that. But these children were speaking like adults, but these were children. You know what I'm saying? And there's such an innocence with them. A child that's protected from the enemy, like you're not just leaving your child at any daycare, any babysitter, you know, they're not being fondled with. That child can hold on to their innocence, and they can see things, they will speak things, you know, Abba will use their mouth to speak things and warn, and it's just amazing. You know what I'm saying? But however, when he sees these wonderful gifts get fundled with or something, like now, these corrupted doctors are allowing their parents to change their sex orientation. I'm just like, that's just straight up witchcraft. That's taking a child's innocence from them, right? So I wanted to come on here because I wanted to share some scriptures about children. And it's a need for this because I was getting ready to seek vengeance when it comes to these children. Their parents are prostituting them for financial gain. You got these celebrate me people sacrificing them to their pagan deities for their blood or to get to a heighten of fame, fortune, or something. Then you got the child being, you might as well say, given to a pagan deity when it comes to the educational systems from elementary all the way up to these colleges and universities, because let's get real here. We know who runs the colleges and universities, and let's just say the institution in general. And then they try to get them to join certain clubs. So they're just consistently being stripped from being able to think in the way Abba wants them to think. But let's get real here. It's not just the educational system, it's the home as well. Because we see throughout scripture that Abba tells the parents that you are to train the child in the way they should go. The way you've been taught, you are supposed to teach your children and their children. So even the parents are getting ready to be held accountable. Those that have not repented and turned back to Abba Yahuah, they're going to be held very accountable for the behavior of their children, because teachers are not responsible. They're there to teach your children because they're getting paid to do that, right? However, it's the parents' responsibility to teach the child the actual foundation, the true foundation, which is Abba's word. You know what I'm saying? So he can have a personal, so they can come to know Yahusha, which is the only way to Abba Yahuah. That is their first introductory in education. They should first learn. You know what I'm saying? That when they go into these systems, which I was getting ready to get rid of because he's about to have a lot of his children homeschool their children. It's already starting now. You know what I'm saying? Because let's get real here. The enemy was very cunning when he allowed the quote unquote Bible and prayer to be in school. That was to give the delusion that your children were safe in these institutions, to be indoctrinated with lies and false history. Then you saw they slowly but surely got rid of it. They had no intentions of keeping that in there. That's why they're trying to make every excuse under the sun not to bring the Bible back into the institution, because they have nothing in common. What is light got to do with darkness? Nothing whatsoever. Okay. So Abba kept giving me the scripture, this boker. And if you don't know what boker means, it means morning, right? The early hours in the yom. And I kept hearing him saying, let the little children come to me. Let the little children come to me. And so I wrote down in my notes, I said, they have hindered your children from coming to you through media, religion, and education, and you are furious. They worship themselves. So I was talking about right here about people that love to be celebrated, the celebrate me people. They worship themselves as gods, just as Yahuah did with the Asherah statue. I said, Abba, you getting ready to remove these idols and the idolization of these celebrities. And so this is where I got Abba Yahuah 19:14 that says, but Yahusha said, allow the young children and do not stop them from coming to me, for such is the reign of the Shemayim, right? And so if you think about it, the enemy has used tradition, culture, and fashion to keep us from Abba Yahuah, because they don't align up to his word. So instead of bringing us closer to him, it brought us away from him. The only way sometimes we got a little bit close to him was on quote unquote Sunday worship, which is not the actual day of worship. It's today, the Sabbath Yom. That's man's worship day. That's worshiping. Sunday is the worshiping of the sun god Nimrod. That's man's created worship day. We don't worship that, right? We don't do that. And so, and even then, those so-called leaders was not even teaching us the right way that we should go. Because once we left there was no difference. Somebody can, you just left the building and you just cursed somebody. And it has been a generational thing. So this is why we consistently see in the Deuteronomy 28 curses versus the blessings, because doing the complete opposite. Nobody stood up and say, okay, this ain't right, but more so do as you're told by man, right? But there has become a spiritual drought. And this is why there's such a spiritual death going on with the children. This is why you're seeing children die more prematurely than they're supposed to. Children are not even living past the age of 10 nowadays because of the curses, because there's such a spiritual drought. There's more wickedness among the youth than it is righteous light. You know what I'm saying? Just because they go up in the buildings have failed them. This is why you got them believing that they're confused in their sex orientation and all this other things, totally against Abba's word. You know what I'm saying? Mark 9:36, and he took a little child and set him in their midst and took him in his arms, and he said to them, whoever receives one of such little children in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives not me, but the one who sent me. There you go. And so, children are like an innocence, but he does tell us to come to him like little children. Children are innocent. They're open-minded. You know what I'm saying? They believe, they want to believe that when you place them in someone's care, that that they can trust you, that you're not going to place them in harm's way. You know what I'm saying? That's how trusting they are. And that's how trusting we are to be with Abba Yahuah. But unfortunately, because our parents was not taught the word themselves, our parents placed us in wrong hands, and it opened the wrong doors to these deities, these demonic entities to come and influence our life away from Abba. Because now we got anger towards our parents, because it's like you're supposed to be the first defense mechanism, and these are how these children feel. They're okay. Thank you, Abba. Because parents are supposed to be the steward of the children, right? Children are a recorder of what they see. So they're looking at you as their protection. Father's supposed to be the reflection of Abba's protection. The sternness, the structure, the authority. The mother is representing the compassion and the nurturing part, but however, there's an authoritative part with her too, right? They supposed to tag team and training the child in the way they should go. It should never be a broken household. But the enemy has even done that, which leaves a door open. You know what I'm saying? For anything or anyone, imposters, to come in and infiltrate the mindset of that child away from Abba Yahuah versus towards him. And this is how some children, or let's say some teenagers, have gotten involved in occult practices. The open door, right? Boy. So let's go into Matthew Yahuah 18, 2-6. And Yahusha called a little child to him, set him in their midst, and said, truly I say to you, unless you turn and become as little children, you shall no means enter into the reign of the Shemayim. Whoever then humbles himself as this little child is the greatest in the Shemayim, the reign of the Shemayim. Whoever receives one little child like this in my name receives me. But whoever causes one of these little children who believe in me to stumble, it is better for him that a millstone be hung around his neck and that he be drawn in the depth of. So because of, if you think about that, those that have been created a stumbling block for a lot of us. Our parents sometimes have created stumbling blocks for us. For instance, a lot of y'all that felt like y'all were called to certain things and your parents told you couldn't make no money in that. Like me, for instance, I was in art. I love art. I love English. But when I told my mom I wanted to go to school for art, she was like, you cannot make money in art. But see, that's something that Abba had called me into, wasn't a place of creativity. You know what I'm saying? But because she didn't know any better, and she probably had, my grandmother wasn't like that, but my grandfather wasn't all that nurturing like that. So of course, my mom had this determination that she was going to do whatever it takes to get out of the country. But did she ever really learn what her passion was? No. All she knew was to be a laborer, just like what Rockefeller had created the educational system to do. So when it came down to me, it was more like, no, you are going to either go to college and get indoctrinated, or you're going to go to the military once again, getting indoctrinated. And because I didn't have the money to go to college and study what I wanted to, I ended up going into the military. Now, what the enemy meant for evil, Abba always turned around for good. So I was only in the military for a short period of time because I told Abba, I didn't even know that was prayer, that wasn't where I wanted to be at. I didn't have a passion for it. It was just, I felt empty. You know what I'm saying? And of course, the enemy used that to open doors to other things. But however, Abba got me out. But however, when I got out, I began to order my steps of things I could be compassionate about. Like I loved, studying the mind. So going to school for psychology, which I know now psychology is based on humanistic perspective, which is living life, self-help and all this stuff with Abba Yahuah. But however, now I have the other side of it, which is scripture related, But however, I know now mental health is just nothing but demons and stuff like that. But I will can continue to order my steps. But the enemy knows how to start with the parents to be the stumbling blocks, right? Because the parents are supposed to teach the children in the way they should go according to Abba's word. That when they go into this world, they're able to discern. They got wisdom. They know to go back to the basic law, the basic instructions before leaving the arrest. That's what they call the Bible, y'all. But anyway, but the instructions of Abba's words, so they can hear him on their own, because his sheep knows his voice. But because of the absence of that, we've been listening to a complete stranger's voice and his philosophies and things like that has led us down the path of destruction versus towards life. Now, however, a lot of us is coming out of Babylon, the infiltration and the infrastructure of the system. And I was using us and these type of platforms to teach each other in the way they should go, because it does take I ain't gonna say a village. It takes a tribe of people to raise children. And it's going to take a tribe of people to draw the lost sheep back to Yahusha, so he can lead them to Abba Yahuah, so they can walk out the plans that he has from them since the very beginning, when he knitted them in their mother's womb, according to Jeremiah 29:11. Because a lot of them are prophets. A lot of the children that the enemy is destroying through media distractions with the computer and their cell phones, believe it or not, are a serious threat to the enemy's devices. So he's going to do whatever it takes. And if people are so concerned about the adults versus the children, remember, the children are the next generation. You know what I'm saying? But they have to learn from somebody. And unfortunately, right now, there's a low rate. There is a spiritual nutrient deficiency in the word of Abba Yahuah. But however, he is raising, like I said, people up rapidly. People are going to be filled with this Ruach. He's pouring his Ruach even on the youth. That the youth going to begin to prophesy. That the elderly is going to begin to have dreams and visions. Hello? You know what I'm saying? So Abba, he's speaking right now. So let's go into, okay, so before that, when he was talking about it's better for them to, have a milestone around his neck. Think about these so-called pastors. I always said they're going to be held accountable because they're teaching rehearsed gospel, scripted gospel that they have learned from their cemetery school. Oops, did I say that? Seminary school, but aka cemetery school, because it teaches people spiritual death versus life. Because it's nothing but scripted teaching. If you notice, everybody's repeating the same thing and they try to word it differently, but try to make sure they ain't plagiarizing each other. But it's all scripted. Ain't nobody changing in the congregation. Everybody's saying yeah, but don't know what they're saying yeah to. And it has turned to magnifying the spirit of the Ruach, the unclean Ruach of Mammon versus Abba Yahuah. And being obedient, that you've received the promises and the blessings. But obedience is better than sacrifice. So they're thinking me sacrificing 10% of tithes every Sunday is going to bring me the blessings, and it's not. It's not, because you're not trying to change none. And it's just teaching the children the same thing along with worshiping the pagan holidays. But which is against Abba's word. And so this is the things we have to be mindful of, right? But however, the build-in has been a stumbling block for a lot of us, because we are holding these pastors, these teachers, they supposed to teach us, but no, they're getting paid to teach you lies once again. And then you begin to teach your children these lies because there is no revelation that's going on. You're not getting anything. It's just receiving the word on rocky soil, that the sun or anything can come and scorch it up and eat the seed. Ain't nothing being planted. It ain't no ground being broken or tilled for your heart to receive the word. It's going in one ear and out the other, because all a lot of people think about is, can I get home? So can we go to Fuller's buffet? They always want to go to the buffet, dealing with the spirit of gluttony. They got to always go to the Golden Corral or something like that. So they're thinking about food. When Abba says, man shall not live by, Yahusha said, man shall not live by bread alone, but by the word of Abba Yahuah, right? So you think about food, or Tyler Perry's latest movie, or sports. Idols. All these are idols. You're thinking with your carnal nature versus you receiving the word of Abba Yahuah. And then you're teaching these children that because time they get in the car, like how I used to be, I was automatically putting my earphones back in my ear, listening to secular music. It didn't change me none. No conviction whatsoever. Actually, I'll be sitting up there in church doodling on the little program or whatever. I was just ready for it to get home, because I'm like, you woke me up for what? You woke me up for this? Just to hear a man scream and shout and claim that he got this power and stuff like that? I'm just ready to go home so I can talk on the phone or something. I'll go back to sleep or eat some food. You know? So let us go to Ephesians 6:4. Ephesians 6:4 says, and you fathers, do not provoke your children, but bring them up in the instruction and the admonitions of Adonai. So nowadays, you once again got these fathers that would down talk their sons, punch them in their chest, be a man. How can he be a man if you're not teaching him in the instructions of Abba Yahuah? You're just repeating the same thing that your daddy did with you. Talk down to you, make you feel inferior because of jealousy or something. You ain't gonna never be nothing. All this other stuff is a repeat of what you was taught, and then you're gonna have the nerve to say be a man because your dad told you to be a man too. That is not in the ways of Abba Yahuah, right? So then he's gonna do the same thing to his son, or he's gonna be abusive to his wife. Something like that starts from childhood, right? But a child that is taught in the ways of Abba Yahuah, there's such peace, right? And so let me finish that. And it says, you fathers, do not provoke your children, but bring them up in the instruction and our mission of Adonai. Only guard yourself and your life diligently, and lest you forget the words your eyes have seen, and lest they turn aside from your heart, all the yeomen of your life. And you, so that first one was Ephesians 6:4. And then Deuteronomy 4:9 is only guard yourself and guard your life diligently, and lest you forget the words your eyes have seen, and lest they turn aside from your heart, all the yeomen of your life. And you shall move them known to your children and your grandchildren. So that scripture right there is, us being taught Abba's word, and we to guard it, but it's our responsibilities as adults as we grow in Abba's word to teach our children and our grandchildren. So even if our children run astray, when the grandchildren come and spend time with their grandparents or the aunts and aunties or whatever, it's our responsibilities to impart those words into them. Somebody still got to teach them in the way they're supposed to go. So there can't be an excuse, well, y'all didn't teach me the words, so what do y'all expect? Blah, blah, blah. Somebody in that family needs to be the salt of the earth and the light to that child's life by speaking Abba's word and leading them and guiding them and being able to discern when the enemy is trying to place a snare for them, whether it's with their friends, peer pressure, what they're watching. Somebody got to be able to see things spiritually. But unfortunately, there's a lot more people spiritually blind than there is being able to see. Right? And so this is where we have train up a child in the way that he should go. Even when he is old, he turns not away from it. So that's Mashe, Proverbs 22:6. That's pretty much explainable. Training the child in the way that it should go. You know what I'm saying? And he will not forget him because it's habit. It's created habit. Conditioning, what psychology likes to say, conditioning. You're conditioning to meditate on the word Yom and Layla, which is day and night. That as they grow up, they're like, oh yeah, I remember, oh, thanks, Abba. They hear him. You know what I'm saying? When he said, don't go this way, don't go that way, don't go to that university, they're not going against what he's saying. They're saying, I trust you, Abba, lead me, order my steps as you do the obedient ones or the righteous ones. They are trusting in him, right? And so now we're going to go, and all your children taught by Yahuah, and the peace of your children great. And this is Yeshayahu 54:13. So which means if your children is taught by Abba Yahuah, then there's going to be peace with your children. Your children, you're not going to have to worry about your children just getting in all kinds of mess because they're going by the Ruach HaKodesh, what the Ruach HaKodesh teaches them and show them, right? Versus you being concerned about your child. Yes, the enemy is going to try. But we remember Psalms 91. No sickness or disease shall not come near your dwelling place. Those that hide in the shadow of the Almighty. You won't really have to worry about, yes, the enemy going to try to tempt them. Yes, the enemy is going to try to find ways to try to take them out. But when a child is hidden under the shadow of Almighty and Abba has his hand strongly upon that child, he says, no weapon formed against thee shall not prosper, and every tongue that rise up against thee will be condemned. Those that will try to lay a pit for your child, whether it is falsely accusing them of rape, especially young men folks, or them being in the wrong place at the wrong time where they are in enemy's crossfire, as in getting gunned down by, or falsely targeted by the watchdogs, aka the police, all these other things. You don't have to really worry about their blood being shed in the streets. But if your children are not walking in the ways of Abba Yahuah and they're still under, the curses of Deuteronomy 28, then it's going to be what it says. There's going to be a lot of funerals. There's going to be bloodshed and all this other stuff because they're not under the protection of Abba Yahuah. There's a difference. But when your child is walking in the ways of Abba, you have peace with your child. I have trained my child in the ways that they should go, that when they go in this world, if they make a mistake, it's not because we did not teach them. It's not that we did not teach them intercessory prayer, to read their word, to talk to Abba, start their day, end their day with them. It's not that you did not teach them. They got to go through their own process or personal process, because you cannot carry their staff for them. But you can trust that Abba will order their steps. They will hear him when the enemy is trying to cloud their judgment and clog up their ears with the deaf, dumb, and mute unclean ruachs. That Abba will clear out the smoke. When the enemy tries to come in like a flood, Abba will begin to raise a standard, and they will hear his voice, and they will come up higher where he is. You know what I'm saying? And it's because you're praying for them as well. You're fasting for them. Now, don't be like Job that, you feel like you gotta always do sacrificing for your children, that, and your worst fear come upon you. There's some things that's just out of your control. But however, as you're coming into truth and nothing but the truth, along with Abba's word, and you turn back to him, and you begin to then work as much as you can to restore and try to teach your children as much as you can, then whatever decision they make, it won't hurt as much, because you have try to set the record straight in your household, where everything is in governmental, or should I say Abba's governmental alignment in your household. Okay, so let's move on to Telling 127. It says, look, children are an inheritance from Yahuah. The fruit of the womb is the reward. And this is Telling 127:3. So children are a gift. You know what I'm saying? People be looking at children, they are hindrance, but now people are looking at children as monetary gain and commodity, product and consumer benefits. But however, it's the fruit of the womb. Children are an inheritance, because they are to repeat what you have taught them, and it's supposed to go generation in front of generation. So if there's abundance, is there being fruitful and multiplied? It's supposed to be a reflection. Look at Abraham with his son Isaac and Jacob. There was a repetition of cycle. There was some bad habits there lying, but however, they were fruitful and multiplied. They had wealth, but then most importantly, they had that relationship with Abba Yahuah that never changed. And so Abba will fight their enemies for them, but also he will bless them as well. That's the inheritance. And so the last one I'm going to read is, I have two more. So children's children are the crown of old men, and the adornment of children is in their father. And that's Michelle, which is known as Proverbs 17:6. And I have no greater joy than to hear of children walking in truth. Yehukanan 1:4. So Abba has no greater joy than his children walking in the truth and nothing but the truth. So when you parents, or you that don't have children and you have nieces and nephews, don't be surprised if Abba, and this is for the aunts and stuff, or even cousins, start placing in you to start speaking life in these children and start teaching them the truth, because they need, like I said, the light in their life. And don't be surprised if some of you that are writers, that love writing children's books, that I will start using y'all to write stories for children to be introduced to Yahusha. You know what I'm saying? Because the only way to Abba Yahuah is through Yahusha. The introductory. You are the bridge to Yahusha, and Yahusha is the way to Abba Yahuah. And these children need that. This youth needs that. And those that are doing AIs, using AI as telling Bible stories, the same way Abba can use you for that too. So I just wanted to come on here because there's such a weight. There's such an urgency for these children, and Abba is going to show his wrath on these that have led their the little children away from him. So finishing, Abba, like I said, is putting an alert out for his children. And it's us that are truly walking in the ways of Abba Yahuah to lead these children in the way they should go, to introduce them to Yahusha, so they can build their own personal relationship where Yahusha can lead them to learning Abba Yahuah, right? And I believe that's the greatest joy of all, because it's too many children dying in the hands of the enemy by guns, by school shootings, by amongst each other because of jealousy, by them being molested or beaten by predators, you know what I'm saying, pedophiles, by them being violated by predators, or should I say the false indoctrination about, like Abba has made a mistake about their sex orientation, and they're going in there mutilating themselves, which is a form of self-hate and hatred and rejection. And then once again, suicide. You know, let's not forget that they're unaliving themselves through drugs, alcohol, partying, you know, through these overdoses, because they're thinking it's just innocent, and there's nothing innocent in these things. And so, however, instead of there being multiple death decrees and funerals, let's, you know, be the ones that's bringing life so these children can have life more abundantly, that it begins to become in full manifestation in their life, you know, their adult life, that when they have children, they can repeat it, and their children feel safe with their parents. They have testimonies to share. The whole family structure is working together, where it's just not the husband and wife prophesying, but the children are now prophesying. They're prophesying over their friends that are living in broken households. Come on. So Abba has a plan, but it starts with us adults. And so as I had that dream, you know, I don't really interact with children. I'm more so like with teenagers. Give me all the teenagers. But I know Abba was like, you know, has been telling me, you know, children gonna have need of you too. May not have children of my own, but I can be a mother to other people's children in a sense. But yeah, that's another topic for another day. But anyway, I just had to come on here and share this word because, and share those scriptures, because there's a need for us adults with these children. And all this mess about the children, the teacher, you know, the children acting unruly with the children, you know, the parents and stuff. It just shows that when you're living a life with Abba Yahuah, there is not going to be structure, that there is going to be chaos. There is going to be storms. There is going to be sackcloth of mourning and lamentation. But when you have Abba in the midst, there is peace. There is unity. There is abundance. There is wealth in a sense. And it's not dealing with money, but there's such a wealth of just knowing that everything's going to work out for the good. You know what I'm saying? And everybody can work with each other. Everybody recognize each other's gifts. And instead of shutting it down and stifling it, like a lot of us have experienced in our childhood, you're teaching your child to embrace those gifts and talents that they have, and asking Abba, what is it that you are wanting my child to use these gifts for in your Rets, to bring you esteem in the Rets? That when that child begins to say, Mommy, I had this dream, you're able to help that child interpret it, or they can feel like they can share with you what the dream is, and you can interpret it, and it gives them at ease. You know what I'm saying? And so that's all I have for you guys. If you And if you want to know, the Bible that I'm reading for is the BYNV version Bible. But if you wanted to go back and read those scriptures, I was reading Abba Yahuah 19:14, Mark 9:36, Abba Yahuah 18 verse 2 through 6. Let's see, Ephesians 6:4, Deuteronomy 4:9, Proverbs, which is Michelle 22:6, Yeshayahu, which y'all know is Isaiah 54:13, Telahim, which is Psalms 127 verse 3, and Michelle, which is Proverbs 17:6, and 3rd Yehukanim 1:4. So go back and read those scriptures in regards to what Abba say about children, because Abba's gonna go in, especially on these wicked people and what they've been doing to these children. But it's time for Abba's children to get it together, because, like I said, this rebellious behavior is a crying out for help. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to say, oh, I'm making excuses for their behavior, but it's another form of cry for help. They really need it. Because like I said, a lot of children that come, young men that come up on my doorstep, whether they out here trying to sell products or something like that, and Abba has me speaking to them, they ain't even concerned about the work no more. Actually, I don't see them no more after I speak to them, because it's like, you've given me confirmation. You know what I'm saying? Thank you. Confirmation, my mom, or confirmation of what I've been hearing. And so Abba has a way. And when you are sent to be that light and you have a young person on your doorstep, I don't care if they quote unquote look ratchet, speak life into them, because the words that I was giving you can change the whole direction of their life. But if you remain silent, then guess what? You're just leaving the enemy to continue on running rampant in their life and bringing chaos to their life. Your words, or the word Abba wants you to speak, can actually save that person from that accident that's getting ready to be around the corner waiting for them. Because you spoke the life and spoke prophetically in that life that just changed the whole direction. They might even leave your house and go a different direction versus the way the place, the original route they was going to take, that the enemy had that trap set up for them. You know what I'm saying? So, and you as teachers, hear me what I'm saying. You teachers, I understand these children may be acting up, but if you know the word Abba Yahuah and Abba highlights a child to you, I think that's why I like the Ron Clark story, because he, even though he did not look like those children, he went in the roughest school, and he said, you know, they was trying to place him in another classroom. He said, no, give me them. But yet they was labeled as the worst children. But however, each child, he saw their potential, and he worked with those children, even up to one time he was sick. But because of that man saw the potential in these so-called rebellious children, or a trouble starter and troublemaking children, he made a difference in their life. Matthew Perry, by the way, played that movie, but the man was from North Carolina. But those children graduated. They went off to college and they graduated. You know what I'm saying? They actually scored top of the so-called better students because he saw the potential in these children. I don't believe there's a such thing as a bad child. The reason why the child is showing bad behavior is because they're not being taught in the way that it should go. Somebody's not speaking life into them. And so, of course, they're going to regurgitate the bad seed, because it's almost like they teaching themselves, or the media is teaching them. You know what I'm saying? Where are the helpers? Where are they help? And even if they act like they don't need your help, you'll be surprised that later on, if that child ever, that child grows up and they come across you, they're like, if it wasn't for the words you said to me that day, I don't know what I've done. I may have not have showed it at that moment in time, but it really hit hard. Trust and believe I had that to happen. It may not have been a child, but it was an adult that told me that. I saw the potential in that person, but it wasn't years later. They said, thank you. I couldn't see it then, but now I see it. But I appreciate you trying to work with me, even though I rejected you. Just sow the seed or water the seed. That's all you can do. But they need you. They need you to speak into them. So that is all I have, you guys. I hope that y'all understood what I was saying today. I hope y'all go back and read the word for yourself. And I pray that if Abba has led you or been speaking to you and saying that you're getting ready to be called into the areas of working with children, whether it is through mental health or you being called in the educational system, you're going to have to understand that educational system. Get some books that's really going to expose how the infrastructure of the educational system really works before you call yourself going in there. Because if you don't know what who your enemies are, then you just going in there with some blanks. But it's going to be Abba Yahuah that's going to open the door and give you the instructions of how you're going to be able to complete the assignments that he's placing you in this institution to be. And don't be surprised that some of y'all may end up on the educational board to make a difference, or being a watchman on these educational boards. Okay? So, and once again, those that are called to be authors right now and writing children's books, let Abba use you in a mightily way. Don't sugarcoat, don't water down nothing. However, the vision he's giving you, I pray that he connect you with the right illustrators and things like that. And also those that's using AI, you know what I'm saying, to create Bible stories for children or whatever. Let Abba use you in a mighty way, and may he connect you with the right people that's going to be able to help you get the assignment done, like he did Ezra and Nehemiah when it came to building the wall and rebuilding the house of Yisrael. All right, I'm getting ready to get off here. I enjoyed speaking with you. So I see y'all next time on Out the Box Kingdom Talk with me, Out the Box Kingdom. Barak Shalom.